This Western Conference Futures Update plus second half post All-Star break preview edition of the NBA Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Game Time, your home for the lowest price, last minute tickets. Download the Game Time app today and make sure you use our promo code SGPN for $20 off. And we're also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Play along Underdogs, pick them for a chance to win 100x. Make sure you use our promo code NBA SGPN at underdogfantasy.com for a 100% deposit match. And we're also brought to you by Hall of Fame Bets, a sports betting research platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit hofbets.com and use promo code SGPN to get 50% off your first month and start making smarter bets today. Welcome, everyone, to the NBA Gambling Podcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is Tuesday, February the 20th, currently 11:08 on the East Coast. Here to kind of reset the batteries, kind of go back and look at what we saw in the first half of the regular season in the Eastern Conference. And we'll talk about some futures that we may be looking at, particular in the Eastern Conference, and get you guys ready for the second half of the season. And joining me here to help me break it all down, you guys know him as the voice of the Tennis Gambling Podcast, the WNBA Gambling Podcast, the NFL, the NBA, and of course here, I should say NFL and the MLB. And of course here on the NBA Podcast, it's Scott Reichel. Scott, what's going on, my man? I already got baseball on my mind.
Yeah, doing well. Looking forward to both the rest of the basketball season and baseball season. Shameless plug there for the MLB Gambling Podcast show. It should be fun. Looking forward to it. It's kind of a weird spot because it's the post All-Star break. I know initially, I think you titled it as the second half, and I changed it because the season's already more than halfway over.
Yeah.
So I kind of had to, change the title a little bit, but should be fun. The West has been very up in the air, so it should be a lot of chaos. There should be a lot of chaos moving forward. The All-Star break was pretty awful, but we're not here to talk about that, but it is what it is. Looking forward to the second half, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, second half post All-Star break. I see some people call it mid-season, but I think, generally, I think people get the context of what we're trying to do here as the second half post All-Star break, whatever you want to call it, kicks off officially on Thursday with a huge slate of games. So we'll be here today. We'll talk about the Western Conference and what we've seen pre-All-Star break, and then we'll do the Eastern Conference tomorrow with Scott and Terrell. And then we'll be back to regular programming for our betting pick show, as we usually do, starting Thursday, which is going to be a huge slate of games as well. So the grind never stops here. We did take one day off yesterday on Monday, but we're back here on Tuesday with myself and Scott. Not much to add for the All-Star weekend there. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but it's the same thing every single year. So we'll just leave it there for the All-Star break. But like you mentioned, Scott, the Western Conference has, I guess, been a little surprising for a lot of us, especially the teams that are sitting at the top here. So I think what we'll do, Scott, we'll kind of just go through the standings, and then after that, just maybe, briefly touch on each team, and then we'll give out some futures. Since we are a betting pick show, we'll give out some futures that we do like for the Western Conference. So let's just kick you right off. So I'll start at the bottom and then work our way up, because I think a bigger conversation will be the teams that are right now, top four in the Western Conference. So the San Antonio Spurs, in the first year, the rookie season for Victor Wembanyama, there was some back and forth about what was going to transpire for Wemby playing this season, because early on, I think a couple months ago, we saw the Spurs come out and say that, Wemby's not going to be playing in back-to-back games. He's either going to play in the front leg of a back-to-back or the second leg of the back-to-back. And then maybe a month or so later, they said, oh, no, we'll put him out there. Maybe it'll be for a limited amount of time. But I think generally NBA fans, Scott, and I know you and I have talked about this a lot, or as us, we've all talked about this a lot. And I think the consensus, not only for our podcast, but also NBA fans in general, is that why is Greg Popovich still at the head coaching position for the Spurs team? And I know what he's done in the past for this organization, But if you take a look in the direction that the Western Conference, and in particular some of the coaches that they have for the Western Conference teams, I mean, the first couple of names that come to mind, you and I are a huge fan of the Oklahoma City Thunder coach, Mark Dagnall, Utah Jazz as well, Will Hardy. I think he's a fantastic coach as well. So I think that's the direction where the San Antonio Spurs need to go, and maybe move out with the old head and Greg Popovich. Look, Greg Popovich, look, great Hall of Fame coach. He has his rings and things like that, but the game changes, and he hasn't caught up to it. And I think that's the results right now. You have the San Antonio Spurs team. We're sitting with a record, Scott, 11-44. I mean, anything you want to add about this team, or just your general thoughts about the Spurs and going to the future?
Well, Wemby's as good as advertised,
Yeah.
which was almost, I don't want to say, unforeseeable, because everyone expected him to be the future savior of the league, but then he was really bad for like the first month, and
Yeah.
everyone was wondering, like, what happened? Like, what is this? And then Wemby figured it out, and he's just been absolutely incredible for the last couple of months at this point. They got rid of all the restrictions. The minutes are still not amazing, but the back-to-back limitations are no longer there. So Wemby's now playing back-to-backs. He's been healthy. I think he's only missed one game this season, either from non-rest or just based on an injury. And that was that situation where he kind of landed on the ball boy's foot in pregame warmup. So he's been durable so far. They were just kind of sugarcoating and trying to protect him after. So he's been healthy. That's a good sign. This feels very Belichick-ish, doesn't it?
Yes.
What
That's a
Papa's
great
doing in
comparison.
San Antonio, because you have this legendary coach who has a really bad roster, and you're used to seeing them with a lot of talent on the team, a superstar quarterback, a superstar power forward, all that talent they had with Duncan and Kawhi, etc. And it just feels like the more that the game has evolved, the more that these older coaches feel stuck in their own ways. And Belichick really never adjusted at all. He tried to hire a defensive coordinator as his offensive coordinator. People might forget that happened. And he tried to be like, oh, no, we're going to be fine. And they were not fine. He kind of ran the team into the ground. The Spurs are kind of the same way, where they have a potential up-and-coming superstar, which is not what New England has, but still.
Yeah.
But then you're looking at the lineups where Sohan's playing point guard, and you don't know what the hell's happening. And then it took like 3 months to realize that Sohan can play point guard.
Yeah.
And you kind of look at Popovich and you have no idea what he's doing. So I don't know if it's a matter of him trying to figure out the roster in what's basically a down year. The fact that maybe he just doesn't know what he's doing with this current team, and he's just going through the motions because he's older and he's still trying to improve his win total, I guess. But it doesn't seem like Popovich is the best fit. But if he's committed to actually staying with the team for X amount of years, and he was rumored to go elsewhere a long time ago, like a year or two ago, are you just going to let the legendary coach try to teach Wemby whatever he possibly can before moving on? Because this team will not be competitive anytime soon unless superstars decide, I want to play with Wemby. But I'm going to ask you, I don't think Popovich is ready to jump ship when he's got a future potential all-time great to coach. I think he's going to hang around. I'm not sure if, as a fan or even just as an actual observer from a distance, if you want to keep Popovich around because of how bad it's been for the entire first season.
Yeah, I mean, I think you made a great comparison to the Bill Belichick situation with the Patriots, right? Maybe like you mentioned, that Pop is trying to teach as much as he can, when he had Tim Duncan to David Robinson to the world and pass that on before maybe they quote unquote force him into retirement, or they mutually agree to part ways and he ends up as a coach for another organization, or whatever the case might be, right? But I do think right now for the Spurs team that, I think that a head coaching change has to be made. And like you mentioned, at the early in the season, they had Jeremy Sohan playing the point guard when we knew that it wasn't going to work out. When you had a guy like Trey Jones in your on your bench, where a guy that like that should be starting for you at minimum for the Spurs team. So right now their updated win total currently over on DraftKings, Scott, is sitting at 17.5. The over is at plus 130. They're sitting with a record of 11-44. Gun to your head, which way are you going?
I think I might actually lean over, because I'm trying to think of, we see it every year. There's a bunch of teams that were playing for something. They have nothing to play for now, and they're just going through the motions. They don't care. I feel like the Spurs are going to try, because Wemby's still trying to reach the 65-game qualifier for Rookie of the Year.
Yeah.
He's still, trying to learn on the fly. I might lean over. I feel like the Spurs down the stretch are still going to be a bad team, But I think that there are other teams that are not going to be focused against them, teams that might be either stuck in their playoff position or maybe just eliminated from contention already.
Mhm.
I think the Spurs can beat those teams. So I'm going to lean over. I don't feel great about it, but I could see them finishing with like 18, 19 at plus money, though. Don't you feel like that kind of roster with so many young guys might actually at least try down the stretch compared to other teams?
Yeah, and I think that we're at 11 right now. They need 7 wins over their final 28 games, 7 and 21, play 33% about. So I think that definitely doable for the San Antonio Spurs. I had the remaining strength of schedule. Yeah, here it is. So San Antonio, I think the downfall for them is that they do have the second toughest schedule remaining, but they do have games against the Pistons, 2 against the Grizzlies, 1 against the Nets, 2 against the Rockets. I don't know why they have the Utah Jazz here as a easy opponent, but Jazz are always feisty, especially at home. So again, we've seen crazier things happen in the NBA. I mean, we saw the Lakers without AD and LeBron go into Boston as a 17 and a half, 18 and a half point underdog and win the game outright. I'm not saying the Spurs, I mean, Spurs are capable of doing that, especially when you have Wemby on this roster. But I'm agree with you. I think I like the over 17 and a half here at plus 130, currently over on DraftKings. And just so you know that the Wemby is minus 600 right now to win Rookie of the Year for this season for that award. All right, Scott, before we get over to the next team here on the schedule, let me tell everyone about our friends over at Game Time. Look, Game Time, it's super easy to buy tickets to your favorite events. It doesn't have to just be sports. If there's a comedy show that's in your area, maybe there's a theater show that's in your area, they take the stress away from having that uh, anxiety that comes with having to look for tickets because their app is so easy to use. Some of the great things that they have killer deals on last minute tickets, and their best price is guaranteed. You can stop stressing over the tickets, like I mentioned. You should be able to get excited for the events that you're going to attend without having to deal with that stress. Their app is so easy to use, like I mentioned. Flash deals, last minute tickets are always available. And it's easy to find tickets for every kind of event in your area. It doesn't have to be just sports, like I mentioned, music, concerts, comedy shows, and theater that's near you. You also get images of your seat view before you actually purchase those tickets, so you won't have any surprises when you actually get to those particular venues. Like I mentioned, they have lowest price guarantee and event cancellation protection as well. So forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and much more. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. Get this: if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. That's how confident they are in their prices. Like I mentioned, you get images of your seat before you actually buy them, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're all set to go. And the tickets, when you purchase them, they're sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through your email box or wait for them in the mailbox. So all you got to do is download the Game Time app, create an account, and make sure you use that promo code SGPN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code SGPN for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And Ross, we're brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy has played alongside your favorite fantasy players all season long, whether it's NBA, NHL, and college basketball. Simply pick higher or lower on your favorite players' fantasy stats and cash, and you can win 100x with some spicy plays. We're going to be continuing our Underdog Fantasy entries starting Thursday, so make sure you guys tune in so you can watch along and make your picks and maybe make a little cash over on Underdog's mobile app or website, underdogfantasy.com. But when you sign up, make sure you use that promo code NBASGPN. Underdog will double your first deposit of up to $100. Again, that's Underdog Fantasy. Make sure you use that promo code NBASGPN. And updated standings right now, we are actually tied for first place in the network-wide contest. Scott, if there was an award that we were giving out for Fan of the Week, I think it has to go to Anthony, because Anthony not only helped us out with that parlay that me and Terrell were trying to look up last week. He got that for us. He also signed up his friend. I'm trying to find where he mentioned that. There he is. So he signed up his friend for Underdog on Friday, and he is rooting for us to take down this competition. So we can only do it with your guys' help. If you already have an account, get your friend signed up like Anthony did. Make sure you use that promo code NBASGP. And so, Anthony, appreciate you, my man. You are the NBA Gambling Podcast Fan of the Week. I will don you that award here for us. All right, Scott, let's keep it rolling here for the Western Conference. Here, next team, maybe not a lot to talk about here, is the Portland Trailblazers. They're currently sitting at 15-39 on the season, 1-11 in the division. I mean, this team didn't really have a sense of direction on where they were going. I know they picked up Scoot Henderson in the draft, and Chauncey Billups came out and said that he is going to be starting the rest of the way for the Portland Trailblazers. But right now, their win total updated number is sitting at 22.5 at plus 105, currently over on DraftKings. I really didn't have much for Portland. I think I'm expecting Portland to be where they are, have one of the worst records at the end of the season, hopefully have another top 5, top 6 pick in the upcoming draft, and they could build for the future in times now without Damian Lillard for this Portland team. But you have anything for Portland?
Under. This team sucks.
Yeah.
At least the Spurs, they have young talent that I know is going to try most nights. I can't even say that about Portland because they paid Ayton. They're basically paying Ayton a lot of money because they inherited the contract in the Nurkic trade. And Ayton no-shows most games. So that's not a good look. You're looking at Scoot, who's been better recently, but still pretty inefficient. And that's been a problem his rookie season. I think he'll figure it out, but at least for now, it's a learn-on-the-job situation, which is not ideal for a point guard. You're looking at all the injuries that they've had, and I know Sharp seems to get injured all the time. Grant's had injury history. Brogdon, I can't believe they kept him after the trade deadline. I thought they were going to ship him off, but there's nothing to like about this team. What, the last time we saw them, they got killed by Minnesota by like 30? Wasn't that the last time we saw them play? Like back-to-back games, they lost by double digits. There's nothing to like about this team. At least the Spurs, I think, can give good effort. Portland, under Chauncey Billups, I can't believe Billups is still the head coach. I've been calling Billups a bad head coach for years. I can't believe he's still employed. But the team is a lost cause. So I think they're going to be a pure, basically an auto fade moving forward. They might win a game or two if Simons scores 40 or they get like a hot performance from one of their scorers, but they don't guard anybody. There's no cohesion. The coaching stinks. There's not much to like about this team. I like the under on Portland.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there as well. I think this is for the second half of the season, at least for the front office, this is going to be a talent evaluation post All-Star break and see what's going to be on this roster. And I think that's going to be also for Chauncey Billups. I mean, would we be surprised if he's the first head coach fired after the season is over? Probably not, just because he hasn't lived up to expectations here for the Portland Trailblazers. So another team that we do expect to be at least in the lottery for this upcoming draft. The next team, Memphis Grizzlies, they're currently sitting with a record of 20-36. Their updated number right now is sitting at, where is Memphis? I do not see Memphis listed here. Yeah, they're not listed, but I mean, I think for this team, it's a throwaway year, Scott, that I mean, they've been decimated. I mean, decimated by injuries. And I think that, I mean, let's start with John Morant, right? He started with the 25-game suspension at the beginning of the year, came back. It looked like maybe the Memphis Grizzlies were going to turn that corner and compete. And then lo and behold, he has a season-ending shoulder injury. Desmond Bane goes down. They have had Luke Kennard go down. Marcus Smart goes down. Jaren Jackson and some of the players that were starting to play in the absence of those guys, they started to go down. So they were pretty much rolling out a C squad for the Memphis Grizzlies. So I'm not going to take anything away from this team. I think that, again, they'll be a team that's going to have a top 7, 8 pick, top 10 pick. You'll get your guys healthy next season. I like Taylor Jenkins as their head coach, but I think for right now, Memphis, you're probably going to want to fade them just because they don't have enough bodies right now. And offensively, they're very limited when you're throwing out guys that are pretty much G League guys or C squad guys or into the bench guys for Memphis here, Scott.
So what did you say the updated number was again?
So I don't see one for them on DraftKings. So I'm trying to scour some of the other places and see if I can find an updated number for them.
Okay, either way, I'm assuming it's going to be somewhere in the, what do you think, like 27 and a half, 28
That's
and a half,
exactly
probably?
the number that was in my head, 27 and a half.
I mean, they have been better with Jaren Jackson back in the lineup, but he gets injured sometimes, and they don't really have any depth. So the question is, if you end up getting some of the guys who are injured back, does it move the needle that much? Because Memphis kind of fits into that Spurs category where I just said, well, the team might not be good, but at least they can try any given night. That's why I think Portland's going to punt, because I just don't think that psychologically they have a lot of mentally tough players. I think Memphis has a culture. Like, I think they're trying. They're just not talented. Mm-hmm. So
27 and a half is the number, sorry.
Yeah. That feels
And
about
Scott, they
right.
also have the fifth easiest schedule remaining. So they have two against the Pistons, one against the Wizards, two against the Spurs, one against the Hornets, and two against the Blazers.
I think I'm gonna lean over with that team. Like they're
Okay.
not good, I'm aware of it, but they lost like 7 straight. Jaren Jackson came back and they have been better recently. It's gonna be close. It's gonna come down to, in my opinion, a game or two. The easy schedule does help, but I think Memphis can be a team that maybe sneaks up on somebody because they just are trying harder and the other
Yeah.
team might be looking ahead. So I think I'm going to lean over to Memphis because at no point this season, despite how bad things have gotten, have they physically quit on the season. And I do like that mindset. So I'm going to lean to the over on that team.
And when you talk about like the players that they are going to be putting on the floor, those guys are going to be competing for roster
Roster spots
spots
and yeah.
next year on not even on only on this team, but other teams are going to be looking at guys to fill the end of their bench, and I think that's an opportunity for those Memphis players to showcase that they do belong in this league here. So yeah, 27.5 is the number. I think we both nailed it. It's at plus 104 is what I'm seeing. So yeah, I definitely agree with you on the over for this Memphis Grizzlies team. Getting over to the next team in the Western Conference here standings. We've got the Houston Rockets. They're sitting at 24-30. A team that came into the season with similar to the Texans, right? New head coach, pretty much a brand new roster. They brought in Fred VanVleet. They brought in Dylan Brooks, some vets in the locker room, Jeff Green as well, to kind of mentor these guys, the younger guys in the locker room, because and I mean, I could sit here for hours talking about the Rockets and how anything and everything that the young guys could get away with under Steven Silas was a possibility. But I think that when Ime Udoka came in, that his word was accountability and holding these guys accountable. But for this Rockets team, we know the home and road split is what stands out, right? Absolutely fantastic team at home, 19-9 at home, one of the better home records in the Western Conference. On the road, absolutely abysmal. One of the worst teams on the road, 5-21 on the road. And again, it was a case proving that their last game was against the Memphis Grizzlies that we just talked about, and they lost that game outright just because, number one, they're not a very good road team, like I mentioned, and Memphis, like we talked about, they've been one of the better home teams, throughout Taylor Jenkins' tenure there as a head coach. So right now, for the Houston Rockets, Scott, their updated numbers sitting at 36.5. Looking at their strength of schedule remaining, they're right around middle of the pack. They do have some easier games left on the schedule. They have 2 against the Wizards, 2 against the Spurs, 3 against the Blazers, and 1 left against the Chicago Bulls here. So what do you think about this Rockets team going forward, at least for the post All-Star break?
So they need to win 13 of their last 28 games.
13 of the last 28, yeah.
I got to check how many games are at home. All right, so they played 26 games away, so they actually have a decent amount of home games left.
Yeah, it's like right down the middle almost.
It goes back. I mean, I don't want to take a bunch of overs with a bunch of bottom feeders, but I feel like I kind of have to. Like, I think Houston, once again, I know how bad they are on the road, but their division's a joke.
Yeah.
I mean, New Orleans is a team that we know can be very up and down. Houston actually plays New Orleans on the road in their first game after the All-Star break.
Mm-hmm.
We know Dallas has been good recently, but they can definitely get off to a bad start, or if they might sit somebody, or defensively they might just not have it. The division's just bad. I think I am only an over on Houston. I don't feel great about it, but looking at this team play and how they've played over the last couple of weeks, this does strike me as being like a 38-win team. I'm going to lean over. It's going to be close because, once again, the road games are kind of a lost cause, but they are good at home.
Yeah.
Then again, the All-Star break couldn't have come at a better time because they were really struggling, and that Knicks game was a gift. Then they lost to Memphis immediately after that. So
yeah.
I think I'm going to lean to the over on Houston. It's good. I could really see them being 37-38. So I'm going to lean over on that team. I just think they're going to try harder than other teams.
Yeah, I think that prior to the All-Star break, they were missing Fred VanVleet. And up until a certain point, they were winless without him. I think that first win without him was that Knicks game where they were absolutely fortunate because the worst call that we've seen in a while. But for this Rockets team, like, you have guys that are still playing, they play hard, like defensively. And even if, let's just say, it comes to the final 10, 12 games that you sit Fred VanVleet Amen Thompson has looked really, really good, and I think he fills in very nicely in the absence of Fred VanVleet. But so like, we have guys on this team that they're going to play hard, and again, Ime Udoka as the head coach, he's gonna have these guys play hard till the end of the season. So right now, like I mentioned, 36.5, I will lean with the over. It is at -130 currently over on DraftKings. So again, definitely shop around for the best number for this Rockets team. Yeah, consensus at -130 on the
It's
over.
also yeah, it's
Yeah,
also based on. I mean, Udoka, of course, is going to be a guy holding his players accountable.
right.
This team with the contracts they actually paid out when it comes to Van Vliet and the money they spent in the offseason with Dylan Brooks, for example, they kind of have to go for the play-in, don't they? Like, there's no incentive to punt with this team, is there?
Not really. Yeah, I think they can go for it. Right now, they're sitting about 3.5 games out of that 10th spot for that play-in tournament bracket. So
It's doable.
it is doable. Yeah, I think it is. Especially with some of the teams that we'll talk about here in front of them, which number one is the Utah Jazz. They're sitting at 11th spot, 26-30, 17-10 at home, 19-20 on the road. I think it's similar to the Rockets of their home and road splits, but the record isn't as bad for the Utah Jazz on the road this season. But this was a team, like you mentioned, with the Rockets, where the All-Star break couldn't have come at a better time. I think for the Utah Jazz, it's the same thing because they were playing absolutely great basketball, and then over the past couple of weeks, they defensively they were just absolutely atrocious. So right now, their updated number for the Utah Jazz is sitting at 37.5 at +115. Their remaining strength of schedule is the fourth most difficult. They have games left within the division. They played 2 against the Clippers, 2 against the Denver Nuggets, 1 against OKC, 2 against Minnesota, 1 against Boston as well. They still have 3 head-to-head meetings against against the Rockets left as well. So, I mean, I think Will Hardy has done a fantastic job thus far with this team. I know that there was a lot of trade rumors about this team, about maybe Jordan Clarkson getting traded. I mean, Lauri Markkanen's name was floating around as well, but Keontae George has been, I think, absolutely fantastic for this Utah Jazz team now that he's getting minutes for this team. But if they don't improve defensively here, Scott, I just don't think they can get over this number. They have the talent on the roster, but I think they have to really bog down defensively. But right now, updated number 37.5 +115 on the over for the Jazz. What are you thinking?
I'm on the under. They can't guard anybody. I mean,
Yeah.
you just mentioned it. It wasn't totally their fault because the schedule wasn't exactly ideal. But if we are going to be picking some of the bottom feeders to go over, some teams have started to play better. But Utah's division is difficult. I mean, besides Portland, Denver's in third place. The defending champions are in third place in the division. Like it's a crazy, it's just an insane division in terms
Yeah.
of difficulty. So I have to at least bring it up. But Utah, the last 4 games, they ended up losing to the Warriors, the Lakers, the Warriors, and the Suns. They gave up 129 plus points in all 4 games.
Yeah.
And 3 of those were at home. So if
Yeah.
you're not going to beat the Warriors twice at home and the Lakers at home, and you pride yourself on basically only being good at home because you're a really bad road team, I'm not going to pick you because you can't guard anyone. So if you need to score 130 points to win these games, not to mention the fact we saw Utah last year actively punt their way out of the play-in.
Yeah.
They ended up sitting Markin in a couple games late. I know he might have been injured, but still. The point is, I don't know if Ainge is fully committed to going for it. And if I don't know if you're fully committed compared to a team like Houston, for example, a team that just has the makeup of we're going to actually try to make a play-in, I don't know if Utah's fully committed to that ideology of trying for a full 82. So with that being the case, I'm not going to pick them. I'm going to be on the under because there's a chance maybe they end up sitting some guys, they fall out of it, they keep losing, and suddenly, you know what, Lauri, why don't you sit for a week? We've
Yeah.
seen it happen before. I wouldn't
Yeah.
be shocked by it, so I'm going to lean to
Mhm.
the under on Utah.
Yeah, I think, like I mentioned, defense has been the biggest problem for this team over the last couple of weeks. And you read the numbers there. That Lakers game, even that was without LeBron as well, and Anthony Davis was
Yeah.
getting whatever he wanted in that game. So until I think I see that team improve defensively, which I probably don't think, because this might be a team that we continue when looking at betting on overs or opposing team total overs, because you mentioned they gave up 129 in 4 or 5 straight games there. So, well, that's something we'll have to keep in mind, when we're getting back to the games here on Thursday for this Utah Jazz team. All right, Scott, before we continue the conversation here for the top 10 teams here getting into the play-in tournament bracket, let me tell everyone about our friends over at Hall of Fame Bets. Win bigger by betting smarter this NFL season with Hall of Fame Bets, the sports betting research platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Research every NBA and soccer bet with historical stats and data. Enter any parlay idea into Hall of Fame Bets revolutionary parlay optimizer tool to get hit rich broken down by leg, as well as an expected probability for the entire parlay. Sort all players by hit rate for any bet to learn which players are hot and which picks have value. Stop betting in the dark and join over 30,000 users researching with Hall of Fame Bets to craft more intelligent, data-driven parlays. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit HOFBets.com and use promo code SGPN to get 50% off your first month today. Start researching, start winning with Hall of Fame Bets. All right, Scott, getting into the top 10 here in the Western Conference. We've got the number 10 team right now that is gotten over 500, and I think they've figured some things out here. That's been the Golden State Warriors, sitting with a record of 26-25, 14-14 at home.
27-26.
I'm sorry, 27-26. Yeah, you're correct. 27-26 in that 10th spot right now. 14-14 at home, 13-12 on the road. The one area that they have struggled in, Scott, for this Golden State Warriors team has been within the division. They're only 4-9 through 13 games in that division. And then in the conference, they've also struggled. They have a 15-20 record. But the good news for Warriors fans is that they have one of the easier schedules going into the post All-Star break for the season. They have the sixth easiest schedule remaining. They have games against the Wizards. They have 3 games against the Spurs, 2 against the Hornets, 1 against the Blazers, Raptors, and the Grizzlies. And again, you've talked a lot about Klay Thompson. And I think that's where I quickly want to mention this. I don't know if you guys did mention it on the last pod, but him and Steve Kerr had the conversation. Klay Thompson now going to be coming off of the bench for this Warriors team. And he himself, in that post-game interview or press conference, I should say, after that first game, he came off the bench. He mentioned that him and Steve Kerr had that conversation. And he said he had 2 options. Either I can pout about it or I can come off of the bench and contribute for my team. And he's still going to get the minutes that he was playing as a starter. But I think for Klay Thompson, just kind of shifting that mindset of...
It's a Ginobili role.
Yeah, and he mentioned Manu Ginobili's name as well, and he's a Hall of Fame player, and I think that might just be a better role for him at this juncture of his career, and just for his mentality as well. And he took that opportunity in that first game, and he scored 35, 37 points coming off of the bench. So I think that might work out very well. Steve Kerr, I think, has figured out these these rotations for the Golden State Warriors. Steph Curry's playing at MVP level. Draymond Green, hopefully he doesn't do anything stupid in the second half of the season here. And I think this Warriors team is trending in the right direction here, Scott. Their updated number right now, and I also mentioned the make-miss playoffs for these top 10 teams as well. So Golden State Warriors at 44.5, and for them to make the playoffs is at plus 120. For them to participate in the play-in tournament, they are a whopping minus 1,200 here, Scott. But what do you think about this Warriors team as we enter post All-Star break?
So you said it was 44.5?
44.5 is the number right now. And they have a 6th easy schedule.
Yeah, I was just doing the math in my head. So that means that they have to win 18.
19?
Yeah, about 18 of their
right,
last. Yeah, it's 18 of their last 29, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's asking a lot, but they are trending in the right direction. I think I am going to lean over on this team, assuming they stay healthy. Because we're looking at the last couple of games that they've played, and they were on a pretty big heater. And then they ended up choking away another massive double-digit lead. Damn, this team can't close games against the Clippers. And the Clippers are viewed as being a serious contender. I know Kawhi didn't play, so that was an embarrassing fourth quarter. But still, the point is they could be potentially on the verge of like a 9-game winning streak, 8-game winning streak if they just held on against the Clippers. They kept it rolling. So they got back on track, beat Utah. Almost blew that game too, but then John Collins chucked the ball out of bounds and they won the game. But I'm going to lean over anyway. This team has played better recently. Maybe it's championship mindset. Maybe it's figuring out the rotations. But at least I like the fact that this team realizes that the current performance has been unacceptable. They've kind of flipped the switch prematurely. I like it. I'm going to lean over. Once again, if they go under, it's because they probably blew a bunch of fourth quarter leads again. But at least they're leading these games. At least I know that they can give you a lead through 3 quarters. And then it might be a circus down the stretch. I'm going to lean over, though. I think this win total is high for a reason. Chris Paul might be coming back soon. I know he's
Yeah.
washed, but he might come off the bench and provide some stability to the backup
Hmm.
point guard position. I like Pajemski a lot. I think him in the
Yeah.
starting lineup solid. Wiggins has been better recently. I think I just like the over for this team. I think it's going to be close once again, but I like how they've played entering the break, and I think that might carry over.
Yeah, I'm with you. I do like. I did bet the Warriors to make the playoffs at plus 120. I do like their over on their updated win total right now of 44.5 as well. For everything that you did mention, last 10 games they are 8-2, so trending in the right direction. And I think that again, like I mentioned, Steve Kerr has figured out the rotations here, and moving Klay Thompson to the bench. So I think they can carry that momentum into the second half of the season here for the Golden State Warriors. Going over to the next team here, Los Angeles Lakers. 30-26. They've been fantastic at home, 19-9 straight up, 11-17 on the road. Been good in the division as well, 6-4 straight up, 20-17 within the conference. Their updated number right now, is let's see here. Where did the Lakers go? Lakers are at 44.5 as well, minus 130 to the over. And for the Lakers to make the playoffs, currently their odds are plus 105. And to participate in the play-in tournament, minus 900. Looking at the remaining strength of schedule, they do have the 10th most difficult schedule remaining, but they do have some games in there that are definitely winnable, playing some of the lesser teams in the league. Two against the Wizards, one against the Spurs, one against the Raptors, two against the Grizzlies, one against the Atlanta Hawks there as well. They still have 2 games left against the Bucks, and then 2 against the Minnesota Timberwolves, one against OKC, one against the Clippers, and one against the Denver Nuggets. I was having a hard time here with the Lakers because they're so reliant on their top guys with LeBron, who's already dealing with an ankle injury. That might be something that's going to be nagging him for the rest of the season. We saw in the All-Star game, he played the first half, but didn't play in the second half. Anthony Davis, again, a guy that can go down anytime, and they've already been without some of their key defensive guys in Torian Prince, Jared Vander, not Torian, I'm sorry,
Well,
Cam
Vanderbilt's also
Reddish,
been injured.
yeah,
So
and Jared Vanderbilt, and Gabe Vincent has been pretty much missing for the entire season. I know he's played a couple games, but he's dealing with that knee injury. So, um, I mean, it's a team that's been decimated by injuries. I don't trust the head coach in Darvin Ham. I expect him to be booted at the end of the season as well. But what are your thoughts on this Lakers team?
I'm also on the fence, but I think I'm going to lean under on this team. They were playing well before the break, but with the LeBron injury, I can't take an over with this team because I know LeBron said he might not play on Thursday. We'll see what happens. Who knows? I mean, the fact is, it's amazing he's still playing at this current level. He's
Yeah.
had a dip, but it's still, insane to think how good he is based on how old he is at this point in time. But with that constantly lingering over, can I see him sitting a bunch of games? Yes. I think it's a spot, though, if the Lakers are minus 900 to make the play in and they end up basically somewhere in the 10 or 9 seed. Doesn't matter. Like, I feel like,
I don't
once
think
again,
so.
8's the magic number because that way you get 2 shots at winning 1 game to get
Right.
into the actual bracket. But I do think I'm going to lean under on this team based on the injury issues, the fact this roster is older, and I think Darvin Ham is an abysmal head coach. So I think the All-Star break might have come at the wrong time for them because they were actually playing some decent basketball before, and we've seen this
Mhm.
team be very streaky, not a very good road team as they're 11-17. The LeBron injury is really the story for me. Also to mention, their win total is basically the same as the Warriors. The Warriors do have 3 games in hand. The Lakers have already played 56 games. So just to
Yeah.
get that on the record, they've played more games than most other teams.
Right.
I'm going to lean to the under because I just think the injuries are too much for this team right now. It might get worse. We'll see. Give me the under. Plus, D'Lo played like an absolute lunatic for a month and a half, and I expect some
Yeah.
regression there. So I'm going to
Mhm.
lean to the under on the Lakers.
If I'm not mistaken, I think the Lakers and the Warriors play each other on Thursday.
They
Yeah,
do.
they do. In
Yeah.
in the Bay Area in San
Golden
Francisco there.
State
So
is minus 4.5.
yeah. So yeah, I think that if you do want to back the Lakers somehow, you probably just want to look at them to make the playoffs at plus 105. If you don't want to take that their updated win total to go over, I think that might be the better bet for this team. All right, let's get over to the top 8 teams in the Western Conference. Sacramento Kings, they're sitting at 31-23, 15-9 at home, 16-14 on the road. And this team right now, Scott, their updated win total is going to be, where is Sacramento?
I'm assuming it's right around the Lakers and the Warriors at like 44.5, 45.5.
They're actually at 47.5.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
plus 115. I think that might be due to the number of home games they have left, because they've only played 24 home games. So 17 of their final 28 games will
Okay.
be at home for the Sacramento Kings team. Um, I mean, I'm not sure what to think of this Sacramento Kings team, man. I feel like they've been a little bit inconsistent this season. We've seen flashes where they have a stretch where they look absolutely amazing, and then there's a stretch where it's like, how is this team even going to make the playoffs? So right now, they are sitting at the 8th spot right now. I mentioned their updated numbers. For them to make the playoffs is sitting at minus 275 on the yes, plus 215 on the no here. But what are your thoughts on this Sacramento Kings team for the second half of the season?
And just to ask right now, they're the 8th seed right now?
Sacramento is sitting at the 8th spot. Yeah,
And how far behind are they of the 7th?
half a game. Dallas.
Okay.
And 1.5 for
I'm
5
I'm
and
asking
6.
because of that playoff price. I like the no. Plus 215 or so? Like, I think that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with the under on the Kings. This team's record's better than I thought it was before I looked at the actual standings because they're 31 and 23, and I can't stand this damn team because it feels like they constantly are just going back and forth on whether or not they're going to look like a good team or whether they're going to fall apart, and it's kind of been alternating back and forth. I'm going to lean to the under because this team, once again, can't guard anybody, and Fox has really not been great for the last couple of months. He has been better. He was good against the Suns the other night in that game they lost anyway. I think he almost had 40 or he did have 40, but still, I'm going to lean under. They didn't make any moves at the deadline. It drives me nuts. They kind of took Herter half out of the rotation, kind of. Barnes is still playing a bunch of minutes. He can't really do anything. So I am going to lean to the under on the Kings. I'm just not sold on this overall core. And
Yeah.
Mike Brown, I like as a coach, but this team doesn't guard anybody. So I'm going to go with the under.
Yeah, I mean, again, I was just looking at the Sacramento Kings, like they're in a spot where, I mean, if they get on a like a 5 or 6 game winning streak, they could easily catapult themselves up into that top
Yeah.
6 in the Western Conference, and then it could easily go the other way as well, right? Because Lakers right now are 2 games behind the Sacramento Kings. They're 2.5 are the Lakers behind Dallas for that 7th spot, and 3.5 behind the Pelicans in that 6th spot. So, um, I think if there's a team that does trend in the wrong direction, it is the Sacramento Kings. But again, if De'Aaron Fox gets injured or misses a week or two, I mean that could just be the downfall for the Sacramento Kings team, because we've seen it with and without De'Aaron Fox on this floor for this Kings team. Like there's a night and day difference between their offense. So I'll lean with on the no. I think that's good value there on plus 215, and then on the under on their updated win total as well. Getting over to the 7th team in the Western Conference right now, the Dallas Mavericks, 32 and 23. They pretty much, I think, won the trade deadline, acquiring PJ Washington and getting Daniel Gafford.
It's them and the Knicks, but we got to wait
Yeah,
on the Knicks because Randall's still injured. So they're a
yeah,
temporary pause. But yeah, the Mavericks recently, based on who's played with the whole
mhm.
roster, they have won.
Yeah, and again, that this was a team that we talked a lot about over the previous season that needed to get some front court depth. They drafted Derek Lively. He should be back. He did play in that Rising Stars game. They acquired Daniel Gafford, who just came out on fire in those first 2 games for the Dallas Mavericks. I know one was against his former team. They've won 6 in a row going into the All-Star break, 7-3. Obviously, you know about Kyrie and Luka. Their updated win total right now, Scott, is sitting at 47.5. And the remaining strength of schedule, the Dallas Mavericks are, where are they? Yeah, they have one of the easier schedules remaining for the rest of the way. But what are your expectations for this Dallas Mavericks team in the post All-Star break here?
Over. You can argue that the All-Star break came at a bad time because they've won 6 straight. But I like what I've seen. The issue was a lack of size, and Gafford's definitely helped plug that issue. We know Luka when healthy, and Kyrie, offensively, they're solid. They've gone up to some bad starts recently. They've been down double digits quite regularly in like the first
Yeah.
quarter of games to some bad teams. but they get back on track afterwards. So it seems like this team is just a very good second half team. They make some adjustments, but I am going to lean to the over on this team because I think that they're playing good basketball. And I'm not saying that I should fully ignore the struggles they had in the first couple months of the season, but it does seem like this team is starting to figure it out. And when you're looking at the teams in the West around them, I got to pick some overs around them. I lean to the Kings under. I lean to the Lakers under. I think the Mavericks are a team trending in the right direction. And Luka, I know he doesn't guard anybody, but I think it's pretty safe to say he's a top, what do you think, like top 4 player in the league, give or take?
Luka, yeah, easily,
Top 3, top 4. So
yeah.
based on that, I got to assume that they'll be able to rely on him to win a couple games by himself. And Kyrie, of course, can have some games too. So Luka's had some injury issues. We'll see if he stays healthy, but I am going to lean over on Dallas. I just like what I've seen for the last couple weeks.
Yeah, and I think the like going back to what they acquired at the trade deadline with PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford, I think that this team is primed to make a run, I think, in the playoffs. When you have Luka, you have healthy Kyrie, the pieces around them as well, like we mentioned. I think that this team is primed, to continue winning games and then, possibly make a run in the playoffs. So I'm with you on Dallas here. I'll take the over 47.5. Getting over to the Pelicans, the top 6 teams now. Pelicans are currently sitting at 33-22, 16-10 at home, 17-12 on the road thus far this season, 8-6 in the division, 23-18 in the Western Conference. Their updated win total right now, Scott, is sitting at 48.5. For them to make the playoffs is going to be, is at, where is the Pelicans? Minus 650. The no is at plus 450. And then if you think this team could end up in the play-in tournament bracket, they're saying they're at plus 140 to enter that conversation. Right now for the Pelicans, they do have the 12th most difficult schedule remaining, 27 games left on their schedule. And they have about 15 of their so yeah, 3 more games at home for the post All-Star break games here for the Pelicans. But what are your thoughts on the Pelicans here going forward?
I'm going to lean to the under on this team just because I can't trust them health-wise.
Yeah.
Zion's played a decent amount of games this season. I think he might sit a couple out. We'll see what happens, but they're another psycho team. I mean, you can make the argument that them and the Kings are kind of similar in that aspect. They're built differently, and I know the Pelicans own the Kings in the head-to-head, but it seems like a team that you look at one week and they win a couple games in a row, and you think, okay, this might be a dark horse candidate. Then you watch them a week later, and they look like they're not going to make the playoffs, and you're wondering what's happening. So I just don't trust their Jekyll and Hyde personality. Also, the injuries don't help. They're a very talented team, obviously, but with the injuries and I'm curious, even if Zion isn't injured per se, does New Orleans cut his games like towards the end of the season just to keep him healthy for the playoffs? That's a possibility. I mean, it's not like Zion's going to be in the line for any awards, so it's not like he really needs to reach the 65 game threshold anyway. He's not going to make an All-NBA team. He's not going to end up winning Most Improved. So there's really no type of game limit for any of these guys. Ingram's not going to make an All-NBA team. McCollum's not going to make an All-NBA team. Herb Jones is not going to win it. Is not going to win Defensive Player of the Year. So they have no players that are candidates for anything. So they might be sitting some guys down the stretch based on the injury history of Zion in particular. I'm going to lean under. I feel like the main priority for New Orleans, besides being too good to be in the play-in tournament, is make sure everybody's healthy. So I'm going to go with the under because that's the main priority for this team.
Yeah, I think that when you mentioned that at least one of the teams that you have to take it over with is probably what like Dallas and then Golden State that we did like. I think that you have to also look in the other direction is that which team are you looking at to kind of fade or think that's going to fall off a little bit. And I think that the Pelicans were that team for me as well, right? I don't want to say they've overperformed in the first half of the season there or pre All-Star break, but when this team is healthy, like we know what they're capable of doing, and I think that. For Zion, he's dealing with a foot issue. We've seen a lot of times being questionable on the injury report. Brandon Ingram's been playing well. But when this team is healthy, we saw what they were able to do in the playoffs. I think that was without Zion. But defensively, we know this team can be really good. But there's just too many factors, especially with all the injuries that they were dealing with early on. You mentioned, right? Jose Alvarado is being in and out of the lineup. Trey Murphy, Herb Jones. We don't know what, with Zion. He could be, I don't want to say shut down, but he could be a player that could miss some time, and that kind of derails the future of this team, at least for the rest of the season. So I think that if there's a team that does fall into that play-in tournament bracket, I think that Pelicans are primed for that as well, because we do expect the Lakers to get better or have a better second half of the season. We do expect the Golden State Warriors as well. And the Pelicans might be that team that kind of falls off, because like we mentioned, Sacramento and Dallas are only, those two teams are only separate, or three teams. I'll talk about Phoenix here in a second as well. Those four teams are only separated by 1.5 games. So 5, 6, 7, and 8 in the Western Conference are only separated by 1.5 games there. So I think that if there's a downward arrow, I think the Pelicans are that team for me. So if you want to get down on them to make that play-in tournament bracket, I think that's a possibility. That number's sitting at, what I say, plus 140 for this New Orleans Pelicans team. So I think that's definitely a possibility for this Pelicans team. Getting over to the next team here, a lot of team that we talked about at volumes because of the star power. The Phoenix Suns, they're sitting at a record of 33-22. Sitting currently as the fifth seed in the Western Conference, 18-11 at home, 15-11 on the road thus far this season. Their updated win total, I should say, right now is at, 48.5 minus 120. For them to participate in the play-in tournament bracket is at plus 120. And then for them to make the playoffs is sitting at, where's Phoenix? Minus 700 on the yes, plus 475 on the no. And Scott, I will mention this. The Phoenix Suns have the most difficult schedule remaining in the entire association. They have 2 games left against Boston, 2 against Minnesota, 2 against OKC, 2 against Cleveland, 2 against the Clippers, and 2 against the Denver Nuggets as well. So what are your thoughts on this Phoenix Suns team? I know early on the season that the big three, or if we want to call it 2.5, with Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, and KD, those guys were in out of the lineup. Bradley Beal had missed some significant time, and he's been, again, going back to the locker room, coming back, things like that. But what are your thoughts on the Phoenix team for the rest of the season?
Yeah, I'm going to lean under on this team. Beal keeps getting hurt. We don't know how long he's going to be out for, but I'm not shocked there. Durant's had injury issues in the past. I don't want to compare it to New Orleans, but I feel like the main incentive here is stay healthy. Phoenix, for better or worse, is going to try to go into any playoff series with their big 2.5, whatever the hell you want to call Bradley Beal, and say we can beat them. Doesn't matter where we are. And I think that that's going to be wrong. I think they're going to lose in the playoffs, but still, that's the philosophy. As long as we got Durant, Booker, and Beal healthy, we got a shot. So I don't think seeding matters. Do I see them being a play-in team? Probably not, but I can see it because they're not a very consistent team. They've had a couple of games where they've been able to erase 20-plus point deficits against Dallas, against Chicago. They've had a couple of these against Sacramento. So the point is we've seen them have good comebacks, but I still don't like the overall roster makeup. Now, I think the addition of Royce O'Neal helps because at least he gives them a 3-and-D guy, which is going to help out. But I'm going to lean under on this team. The schedule is difficult. You said it's the most difficult in the division, in the entire league. I just don't think the roster makeup is built to handle one injury. If Booker or Durant miss some games, they got issues. So I'm going to lean under on this team.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, it's a team that's very reliant on their top guys, right? And then again, one injury can derail the seeding, at least for this Phoenix Suns team. And if they miss, again, like I talked about with Fox, if he misses 1-2 weeks, that could be the difference of them being in the play-in tournament bracket or being a top 6 seed in the Western Conference right now. So I think that number one for this Phoenix Suns team, it is health. That has to be, priority for this team because, again, like we mentioned, they're so reliant on their top guys there. Getting over to the top 4 teams in the Western Conference here. We'll start here with the defending NBA champions, the Denver Nuggets, who are second in the 4th spot with a record of 36-19. They are 3 games back of the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. Fantastic at home, like they always are. 21-5 straight up, 15-14 on the road. Their updated win total number is sitting at 54.5 with juice towards the over at minus 130. And their remaining strength of schedule, Scott, they are at, they have one of the easier schedules. They have I think that, yeah, eighth most easiest schedule remaining. 27 games left for them, which means, let's see here, they played 26 at home. So they have about, 15 games left at home of their remaining 27. What are your thoughts on this Denver Nuggets team?
I believe the record right now is the same as it was last year, I think. So we saw Jokic last year, sat some games late. He kind of punted the MVP race, but they didn't really care. They got the 1 seed anyway, though. So that's kind of the difference, was that last year they ran away with the seeding. This year they're in third. So there actually is some incentive to try to get the 1 seed, especially when you're that good at home. I think Denver cares about the 1 seed. I'm going to lean over. I just think that this team, playoff title teams, are going to start playing their best ball when they need to. And Denver, yes, they have more road games than I'd like. The schedule's
Yeah.
pretty easy, though. I feel like they recognize how important seeding is. And maybe you could disagree because they won the title last year. You figure you got Jokic, you got a shot against anybody. But when you're that good at home, year in, year out with altitude, I do think it matters. And I think if you are expecting, I would probably take Denver in a series against OKC or against Minnesota anyway. But you have the Clippers who are also there. The point is, I just feel like you're looking at a spot where Denver knows that they have arguably the best home court advantage in the entire league. People can argue Boston, they lose half their playoff home games anyways. They don't even count. But Denver, year in, year out, they didn't lose a home playoff game last year. I don't believe that they did. Did they? I don't
I
think they
don't
did.
think so either. Yeah. I don't think they
Wait,
did.
actually, they might have lost one to Miami. I think they might have lost one to Miami in the finals. I think they lost game 2. I think.
Okay.
But that was the only game they lost in the playoffs at home. They're just a dominant home team. So I think it matters. I'm going to lean to the over. I think Denver's going for that 1 seed.
Yeah, again, like this team is obviously the defending champs, but like they've been battle tested, right? I know that they didn't make a lot of moves in the off season or even at the trade deadline, but when
They're
you
a
still
buyout
have your
candidate, though.
yeah, and you still have your core intact with Jokic and Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. and Aaron Gordon. And I know KCP was dealing with the hamstring injury before the All-Star break. So for them, at least for this team, that couldn't have came at a better time to get, one of your best defensive players, if not your best defensive player, healthy. And I think that, you still have Mike Malone as your head coach. So this team is going to continue winning games. And again, they've been a wagon at home, and I think they'll improve on the road as well because, when it comes to the playoffs, if you want to repeat as champions or make another deep run, I think that you're going to have to win games at home. And I think that's something that should correct for them in the second half of the season here for the Denver Nuggets. So I do like the over for this team as well. Getting over to the number 3 seed in the Western Conference right now, that is going to be the LA Clippers, 36-17, 2 games out of the number 1 seed in the Western Conference, 20-6 at home, 16-11 at home, 8-3 in the division. Their updated win total is right now sitting at 55.5 minus 120 towards the over. And their strength of schedule, looking at it right now here, Scott, they have the 7th most difficult schedule remaining. 2 against the Suns, 2 against the Bucks, 1 against Denver, 1 against the Cavs, 1 against the OKC Thunder, and 2 against the Minnesota Timberwolves. We talked a lot about this team when they made the trade for James Harden. I think a lot of people were in the camp that it may not work out, but it took a little bit. I think it took maybe 7, 8, 9 games for Ty Lue and the Clippers to figure it out. And it's worked out very well for this team. Kawhi Leonard has stayed healthy. Paul George has stayed healthy as well. Their depth pieces, some of the guys have been in and out of the lineup, but on paper, this was one of the teams that was the deepest roster. I think started finally coming to fruition. We talked about health with the Pelicans. We talked about it with the Phoenix Suns. This team, I think both you and I agree here, Scott, is that if you have a healthy Kawhi Leonard, you have a healthy Paul George, you have a healthy James Harden, you have a healthy Russell Westbrook, that they can make a run in the Western Conference and be the team that represents the Western Conference in the NBA Finals. So 55.5 right now is the number here. Scott, what are you thinking about this Clippers team rest of the way?
I think this line's insane. I'll be on the under. I think that this line is expecting the entire team to stay as healthy as they did in the first half. And we
Mhm.
saw Kawhi get injured right before the All-Star break. He had an adductor injury. We know that they've babysat him in the past. The playoffs are all this team cares about because this is what they're going to be judged upon. So I don't see any incentive to force Kawhi back early, to force any of these guys early. We know Paul George is injury prone. Harden's been durable, but he's had more injuries in the last couple of years than in previous years.
Yeah.
But I'm going to lean under. See, ZS, I agree that you can believe in the Clippers in general, but it's more of a playoff thing. I don't think they care about the seeding that much. 55.5 for a team with a history of resting its star players. And now Kawhi, who was healthy for the first 3-4 months, is now battling some injuries right before the break. We might see them babysit him again. So I'm going to lean under. It's a massive line. I just think this line's too big. I'll be on the under.
I think they'll be okay if they are in that top four, the top four spot in the Western Conference. At least they'll know that they'll have the first round at home. Um, 55 does feel a little massive here. Was that 53? They have what,
It's not even
29
55.
games left?
It's 56.
Yeah, 56. So they have to go 20 and what, 20 and 9, if I'm not mistaken, 20 and 8 over the final. Yeah, this number does feel a little bit bigger. I think that it'll be right around this number that they end up with either 50, 54, 55 wins. It sneaks right under this number, but I still do think they finish at the top 3 seed in the Western Conference. I'd be surprised if they get the number 1 seed. No, because it's only a 2-game difference, and the 2 teams in front of them are the Oklahoma City Thunder right now at the number 2 spot, sitting at 37 and 17. Another great team that's been good at home, 21 and 16, 16 and 11 at home, 10 and 4 in the division, 22 and 13 in the conference. Their updated win total right now is sitting at 54.5 at minus 145 for this OKC Thunder team. Looking at their strength of schedule, the OKC Thunder have the 7th most easy schedule remaining. They have 1 against the Clippers, 2 against the Suns, 2 against the Bucks, 1 against New York, 1 against the Pelicans, 1 against the Boston Celtics. I think this has been the team that's overachieved at this juncture of the season. I think all of us here on the podcast knew that they were definitely going to be improved after what transpired for this team last season, led by SGA. They got Chet Holmgren for a full season now. You know, he missed the entire season last year. We're a huge fan of their head coach, Mark Dagnall, who's right now, I believe, the odds-on favorite to be Coach of the Year. SGA playing at MVP level. He's a second favorite to win the MVP. Jalen Williams has been great. I know they were dealing with the whole Josh Giddey thing, but that seems like it's something in the past now. But I think this is a team also that, God forbid, if SGA does miss some time, that they could be on a downfall here, because I feel like this is a team that's very reliant on their top guy in SGA and Jalen Williams as well here, Scott. And there was a stretch there where Jalen Williams was missing this some time for this OKC Thunder team, and we saw their offense was really struggling to put up points even with SGA in the lineup here. But what are your thoughts on this OKC Thunder team for the post All-Star break here?
I think I'm going to lean to the under on this team. I of course I'm a fan of the overall roster. We'll see how Gordon Hayward looks, or if there's going to be an adjustment period when he's finally ready to suit up. We'll see. I still don't think they have any size.
Yeah.
And I just feel like we've seen in previous years, OKC hasn't exactly been the best team at closing out the season. You might remember that they had an issue of actually, I don't want to say reaching the play-in last year, but they made it more interesting than it should have been down the stretch. They lost a couple
Mhm.
of games they probably should have won against bad teams. I'm going to lean under. I just feel like with this team having much more important things to look forward to in the playoffs, can I see them looking down on opponents? Can I see them kind of, you know, I just can I see them just overlooking some teams? I can. I'm gonna lean under on this team. I think they might sit Shea for a couple games. We'll see. He's gonna get to 65. Then we'll see what
Yeah.
happens after that. But I do think with the lack of experience, they might be feeling some of those nerves late, trying to play big games to get better seeding. And you can make the argument, well, that means they're going to try. Maybe so. It also means they might be struggling with the pressure because this is going to be some of the most meaningful games they've ever played in.
Yeah.
So I'm going to lean under on this team. I still like them, obviously. I'm not picking them to win the West, but I do think they're going to finish north of 50. But this win total is pretty high. for a pretty inexperienced team that is playing for actual stakes late in the season, I'm going to lean under on this team.
Yeah, they would have to go 18-11 rest of the way to get over 50, what did I say, 54 and a half for this OKC Thunder team. They're playing exactly 14 games at home and 14 games on the road. I know they've been one of the better ATS teams, both at home and on the road as well. But I feel like this number is a hair high. Like, I feel like they end up with 53 or 52 wins here, and that they struggle somewhere along the way, whether it's those final couple games in the final weeks, but also like if this team or these top four seeds are still within a game of each other, um, as far as seeding goes, I think that may come into play here. But I think that I'm going to lean with the under here with OKC here as well. But I do expect SGA to play. I mean, continue playing at a very high level again. I think he kind of won, or not kind of, but wants to get that MVP for the regular season. He's playing that way. He's been absolutely fantastic for this OKC Thunder team, but also as an organization, you also do have bigger goals, right? Making to the playoffs and trying to make a run here, because I think that this team, when it does into the playoffs, I think they're going to be a very tough out. And would I be surprised if we see this team end up in the Western Conference Finals? Absolutely not, because they're well coached, they have the talent, and they play the full 48 minutes as OKC Thunder team. It's just about them being consistent, especially on the offensive end for this OKC Thunder team, which leads us, Scott, to the number one team right now in the Western Conference. That is the Minnesota Timberwolves, sitting with a record of 39-16. They have a 1.5 game lead, excuse me, over the OKC Thunder. 19-5 at home, 20-11 on the road, 8-2 straight up. They've been absolutely fantastic in the Western Conference, 27-8. Looking at their updated win total number, they're at 55.5 minus 130. They are right now the odds-on favorite to be the number one seed at plus 160. And their remaining strength of schedule, they do have let's see here. It's
mediocre.
easier schedule. Yeah, it's right in the middle there, depending on how you want to take it. But Chris Finch has done a fantastic job. Anthony Edwards has played well. Karl Anthony Towns has stayed healthy. Rudy Gobert, been that defensive anchor for this team. What are you thinking about this team here the rest of the way? Do they end up as a number one seed?
So Minnesota's a team that I've called fraudulent in the past. That's not a regular season thing, though. I just think offensively in the playoffs, they're not good enough. But it's not the playoffs. So I think that they'll be able to get by. I think I am going to lean over. Even though I would still probably pick Denver to represent the West. It's tough to go against Jokic.
Mm-hmm.
I do think regular season-wise, Minnesota is going to be fully focused on getting the one seed. I think that they're fully committed to trying to get home court advantage. We saw last year, they ended up losing in Denver, almost potentially stole a game there, or they Edwards missed a shot at the end. I think home court matters for this team. So I'm going to lean over on Minnesota. I still think they might be a prime candidate to lose early in the playoffs and kind of a shocking upset. But for the sake of the final couple of months of the season, they've been in good form. They've been really good. I know Ant's had some injury issues, but most of the team's been healthy. We'll see if that continues. But they were playing good basketball. The chemistry with this team is off the charts because they're taunting the Clippers. Well, they beat down the Clippers. And Kawhi played in that game. They won that game by like 20 and change. So they've been in really good form. I like the chemistry. I like what I've seen. The issues I have with this team are playoff-based, not regular season. So I'm going to go with the over for Minnesota. I personally think they will be the one seed.
I think for Minnesota, for me, is that when I was looking at this, while I do like the over, is that 17 of their final 27 games here are going to be at home. They've played 7 more road games in the first half of the season, and they're sitting as the number one seed with 39 wins right now. And coming out of the All-Star break, they have, let's see here, 7 games at home. They start a 7-game homestand. And they play teams like Milwaukee, Brooklyn, San Antonio, Memphis, Sacramento, the Clippers, and Portland. And then they go on a road trip, I think a 6-game road trip there, but they have opponents in that road trip that they can beat, right? Indiana, LA, they have games against both LA teams, and they play Utah as well on that road trip there. So I think that if they want to create that separation and hang on to this number one seed, it has to be in this 7-game homestand coming out of the All-Star break, coming starting on Friday, because again, they have teams that they can definitely beat. Milwaukee has been a team that's been struggling under Doc Rivers era so far. And like I mentioned, some of the teams that we talked about in the Western Conference that are between San Antonio, Memphis, that they can definitely beat at home here. And like I mentioned, they've been one of the better home teams this season, not only straight up, but ATS wise as well. So I do think they end up as a number one seed. I think they also in the realm of 57, 58 wins for this Minnesota Timberwolves team. So
depending on matchup, once again, I might pick against them in the first round. But for the regular season, I do like how the team is constructed.
Yeah, I like the point that you did make, that home court advantage does matter for this Minnesota Timberwolves team. And you want to say that, hey, you ended up as a number one seed in the Western Conference as well. So yeah, definitely do like Minnesota, at least in the regular season, rest of the way. All right, Scott, that is all 15 teams in the Western Conference that we went through. Briefly touched on every single team in the Western Conference and what we do like and what we don't like the rest of the way. Let's throw out one best bet here, Scott, before we wrap up the episode here. It could be anything. Conference seeding, updated win total, division odds, make miss playoffs, anything that you really stuck out to that would recommend putting some dollars down to our listeners. What do you got?
Okay, so just to ask, I'm between two of them, but I just needed the updated numbers again.
Yeah.
What is Portland at?
Their win total is at where'd it go? It just went off the screen. Let me check this other book here. Portland regular season wins is sitting at 23 and a half. The under is minus 150 and plus 122 on the over.
I mean, it's 150, but I have to give out the under. Like, I just have to. The runner-up was Utah, which is also juiced to the under. But Utah, at least I know, has talent, and maybe they'll surprise me and go for a play-in spot. Portland, I don't know what there is to even like about this team at all. Like, you're going through the All-Star break. They lost 6 straight. They lost to the Pistons. Jeremy Grant scores 49 points, and you lose at home to the Pistons? What, are you serious? New Orleans, they lost that game. Played Minnesota back-to-back games. They got buried. Yeah, they lost by 37 at home in the final game before the All-Star break. There's just no overall, I'd say, I'm trying to think.
Hope.
There's no toughness with this team. I just think that Ayton is a quitter who's fine with the money. I'm a max player, whatever that means. That means he doesn't care about his overall performance moving forward. They have injury issues. It's kind of a full youth movement project, and I think Chauncey Billups can't coach. So it's juicy, but there's a lot of good teams in the West competing for play-in spots, a lot of teams that are still competing for something. Portland can't wait for the season end. I'm on the under for Portland. That's my main pick.
Yeah, I like it. All right, for mine, I'm going to double down on the Warriors here. So over 44 and a half right now on FanDuel is sitting at plus 116. Over 44 and a half wins. And then if you want them to make the playoffs, simply, they are plus 120 to do that. So I'll give you both. Obviously, you want to take the plus 120 to get, 4 more cents. Doesn't matter, if their wins don't get there, that they get into that play-in tournament bracket, they win a game, or they, who knows, could get into that top 6 spot in the Western Conference and they make the playoffs outright. So right now they're at plus 120 to make the playoffs. I do like that. Again, I think that we mentioned it, that Steve Kerr has figured out the rotations. Chris Paul is in the wings of coming back. How impactful will he be? I mean, if it gives you 15, 20 minutes a night, he's in that closing group when it comes down to clutch time. He's a player that's very smart. He has a high IQ. He's an extension of the head coach on the floor for you. That's only going to help you. But I think this Golden State Warriors team is primed to pick up where they left off at the All-Star break. And I think there's an opportunity for Steph Curry and this team to, trend in the right direction. I think they'll be able to do that. So right now for them to make the playoffs, I'm going with plus 120 as my favorite pick for the Western Conference. In the second half of the season / post All-Star break the rest of the way. All right, that is going to wrap it up here for this Western Conference futures update. I know Scott and Terrell will do the Eastern Conference tomorrow, but Scott, anything else you want to mention before we get out of here?
No, back once again tomorrow for the Eastern Conference. Unlike Giannis, we actually watch the NBA.
Yes, we do. So tomorrow, Eastern Conference with Scott and Terrell, and we'll be back to regular NBA betting pick show starting Thursday when the post All-Star break games kick off in the association. Make sure you follow Scott on X. That's at Reichel Radio. You can follow me on X as well at SportsNerd824. Again, we're tied for the underdog contest. Make sure you use that promo code NBA SGPN. Appreciate the 7 of you that have signed up with our promo code on Underdog Fantasy. So we'll be back to get our entries on Thursday as well. All right, same place, same time tomorrow. Till then, good luck with your bets. Let's break these books off and let it ride.